Hello and welcome to Jessie Book Club Blogs. Today we are talking about All About History magazine, issue number 102, and this magazine was all about Saladin. I love Saladin. He is a very interesting figure when it comes to the Crusades, and I've always been really interested in crusading history since I was like a kid. My dad used to tell me all these stories about Richard the Lionheart, and I don't know, it's always something that's stuck in my head and I've always been really interested in it. So I looked forward to reading this when I knew it was coming out. We also had a very fun article about whether or not the Romans wore underwear. And we had an article about Christina, the diva queen of Sweden, who there was an article about her in one of the digital copies of this magazine, which I read a while ago. So I was also interested to read this because it was more of a full-on article. The other one was more of a side article. And then we have Stalin's pseudoscientist, what would happen if there hadn't been a Renaissance, and how well do we really know Churchill. And it was a pretty good magazine. I enjoyed it. It took me a little while to get through it, not because it was boring, but because I'd started a new job and just didn't have time to read. And I was also reading a couple of books, and you know when you get stuck into a book and you're just like, okay, magazines to the side, books take forward focus. So we have our always table of contents. Oh, and our free magazine this month was all about the greatest women in history, and I really enjoyed one part of the magazine. The articles were all really short, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to get it up on my Kindle. So here you go. This is the magazine that came free, and each one was just about a page long, maybe 2 pages long. But what we did have was these adorable little cartoons. Let me get them up so you can see them properly. So look, there's Catherine the Great of Russia. Let it focus for a second. And you've got Anne Frank and Florence Nightingale, and they're so cute. I love them. They kind of look like Raggedy Ann or Andy. Empress Circe, Eleanor of Aquitaine. I just loved the little cartoons. They were like my favorite bit. I read a couple of the articles, but it was all stuff you already knew, more general knowledge than a real article, but I loved the little cartoons. Look at them, they're so lovely. I wish I could draw like that. Like my drawings are always quite like, they look like King of the Hill. Every time I draw it always looks like King of the Hill. I think I watched too much King of the Hill as a teenager, but I love all of them. All of them, they were so cute. Moving along, we have some of our lovely photography, which we always get. You know, here we have the first woman's solo flight across the English Channel. Really cool photo. And then we go on to our timeline article, which I always really enjoy these. This one was about Thailand, and this will make you laugh, right? So I was reading this and watching The Serpent on BBC at the same time, and I don't know, this article made me want to go to Thailand, but watching The Serpent made me not want to go to Thailand because The Serpent was kind of scary. So it opens with our timeline, as these articles always do, about Thailand and how it came to be. It was interesting. I really actually enjoyed reading about the Thai royal family because I only knew a little about them. The problem is, of course, when you haven't been to a country or you haven't researched yourself beforehand, a culture, sometimes things can be taken and you don't know where to put them in context when you're reading in a magazine. I don't know if anyone else has that problem. I have this problem. And then some lovely, what did they wear for, I think it's pronounced Kong dancers in Thailand. That looked really cool. I've seen these, you know, in kind of like travel programs, and I always think they look really cool and a little bit scary. It kind of almost reminds me of like the Krampus masks in a weird way, because, you know, they're demons, you know? And then some lovely Thai writing, kind of the Rosetta Stone of Thailand. Then some very prominent Thai figures, which was interesting. I love reading about like royalty in any culture, so that was really interesting. And then there was this really sad article about Professor Tamara Luz. He was a really interesting character, and this was kind of promoting a book called The Bones Around My Neck, but it was a really good article. And it kind of focuses on, he was around during the turn of the century in the 1890s, and he wrote a paper describing how Thailand should move to a constitutional monarchy like Britain had done. And then he was kicked out of Thailand for the paper, even though it was a sensible idea. You know, the Thai royal family were like, no, he's a subversive, get rid of him. And they exiled him, and then he came back and he died a monk. It was quite a sad story. Very interesting life though, and he studied in Europe as well, and that's when he came back with these new ideas for how Thailand should reform. And interesting book. I don't know if I would read it, but it was definitely interesting and I'd never heard of him. So it was lovely to learn about somebody new. And then you've got the Thai royal palaces, which was lovely. You know, I always like when they give you like, oh, go here, go here. I feel like I'm on TripAdvisor. It's fun. And then advertising. And now we get on to the real meat of the situation, Saladin. And I really love this artwork, and you get to see Jerusalem burning in the background. Well, I guess that's Jerusalem. In my head it's Jerusalem. And this article, again, was almost to promote this man, John Mann's book. John Mann is just called John Mann Saladin. You can see it down there. And it was good. It focused very heavily on Saladin's early life and how he came to power and his family background, which I wasn't expecting. Because when I think Saladin, I always think his later life and the Crusades and him taking back Jerusalem. So it was very, very interesting. This page really covered his early life and when he rose to power in Egypt, which I didn't know he rose to power in Egypt. So that was good. Then we have a little bit about the crusading factions in Jerusalem at the time. And have you guys read the, I think it's called the Silk Road? Templar Silks by Elizabeth Chadwick. I really liked her stories about William Marshall, but then when she wrote Templar Silks, Templar Silks, yes, that's it. I thought it kind of fell out of context. I couldn't finish it. It really bugged me. I really wanted to read it because I love her books, but no, it wasn't going to happen. But he features in this, and his name is Guy de Lusignan. Guy de Lusignan. Well, anyway, his name's Guy, and he kind of became king of Jerusalem for a bit because he married the leper king's sister. I love the story of the leper king. That's one of the reasons I fell in love with crusading history. It was the leper king. I thought his story was remarkable. So I definitely enjoyed this. The article then goes on to talk about how Saladin has become almost a figure of legend within European cinema and how this myth was created, which was really interesting, and I had never thought about it in that context. So that was good. But also, as always with these articles, I really, really loved the artwork. Look at him there on his horse. He looks really menacing. I just love it. I don't know if I would buy the book. Maybe I would buy it on Audible if I was doing some painting or something and I wanted a biography on in the background. I like doing that. Having like a nice biography about someone really interesting on in the background while you're doing something, you know, kind of tedious is always really good. We then move on to the diva queen of Sweden, Christina, who led a very, very outrageous life. Look at her. One day I hope to be half as badass as Christina of Sweden, who became the Queen of Sweden when she was very, very young, converted from Protestantism back to Catholicism, wore men's clothes, gave up her crown, moved to Rome, had lots of affairs, refused to get married. Oh, she was just brilliant. She just had such an interesting life, and I just love it. I'd love not a documentary series. Actually, yes, I would love a documentary series about her, but I would really love a dramatized series about her. I think she's such an interesting character. I think she would make prime TV gold, you know, like a 6-part series about her life and the things she got up to. She's actually buried in St. Peter's Basilica, one of the few women to ever get that privilege. And look at her. Oh, page fell out of the book. I had this on the table downstairs and my cat jumped up because it was open and skidded right off with the page because it was the middle page. But look at her on the horse, and I just love her. There's a lot of rumors about, you know, her sexual orientation and stuff, which was interesting, and how she just refused to identify with any norms. She's just brilliant. There was also movies about her, and they talked about how her representation in film has changed from the 1950s to today, and that's why I think a TV series would be so good as a way to represent her. Look at her there with her hat. She's so cool. I'd love a book. If anybody knows of a good kind of historical fiction book about Christina of Sweden, I would love to read it. We then move on to Stalin's Scientist. This was kind of a boring article. I read about half of it. It was all about winter wheat and this dude here trying to make winter wheat grow in the USSR. It was alright. It wasn't brilliant. I mean, if you're really interested in farming, it would definitely be worth reading. And also, sorry about the page having been like all flimsy. So moving along, once again, we get to 6 Watery Folk Wonders. And this again was to promote a book. And they were cute, like they were just little stories, you know, kind of like little fairy tales, which I enjoyed. And I love the woodcuts, like these little woodcuts are so cool, like I really like them. And I grew up beside a river, so I really love kind of like water legends, and I love swimming as well. So these were really interesting. This one was my favourite, The Lady of Stavron, I think that's how you pronounce it, The Lady of Stavron, and how she ended up making a sandbank and kind of like ruining a city. That was a really interesting story. I also like the Lost City of Wise, or Yees? Lost City of Ease. That was really good, about a guy letting his daughter drown. I really enjoyed that. Of course we have Maui, because we all know Maui because of Moana, which was good. Interesting. If you knew someone who really liked fairy tales, that might be a good book to buy someone as a gift. We then had this article about British fascism. The man who started British fascism was called Sir Oswald Mosley, and wasn't a very nice man. I don't know if he was very nice, he was just power hungry, to be honest, and a bit ridiculous. It tells a story really of his entire life, especially his political career. He went to fight in the First World War and came back and thought there was a problem within government, so he run for Parliament as a Tory MP and lost. So then, like all good politicians, he had a bit of a think and decided he would run for Labour, and he won. And then he got kicked out for being a bit of a dick. And then he decided to start a fascism party because it was already rising in Europe, especially in Italy and Germany, and you can see him there. And it just kind of covers his life and the things he decided to do. But one point of this I found really interesting were the women who supported him. Really interesting. And there was this woman here, Diana Mitford, who was Mosley's second wife, and she had originally been married to the man who was the heir to the Guinness fortune, which was incredibly interesting. There they are. He is one of the reasons that any government party is not allowed to wear uniform, because there was like a whole thing where they like attacked people. And then a few nights later, there was, I think, the night of broken glass in Germany. So then Britain were like, nobody in politics is allowed to wear a uniform. So that was very good. And then it was also talking about how lots of young people supported him. Look at this guy. I thought he looked a bit like Elvis. There he is wearing a badge, fascism badge. It was an interesting article because I really never heard of this man. So if there was a book about him, I wouldn't mind reading it, because God, he was really weird. He's a bit of a dandy too. Like, he was definitely a lad about town for the time. You know, he came from a very privileged background and just an odd person. But it was interesting. You know, of course I don't believe with any of his horrible fascist ideas, but he was definitely a character. And he was imprisoned during the entire Second World War because he supported Hitler, and then he got released, and then people didn't think he should be released, and then he died. So it was definitely interesting. And here are some pictures of riots and goose stepping and stuff. His supporters were called the Black Shirts, and I liked it when they decided to march, and then when they planned their march, it was a march against the Jewish community in London, and the Jewish community and the Irish community got together and like caused this massive riot because they were like, no, you guys suck, because they do suck. It was just really good. I just really enjoyed this article. It's not normally the sort of thing I would read, so I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. It was something I wouldn't normally read, and then I was like, this is really interesting. And then, did the Romans wear underwear? Short answer is, no they didn't, though women did wear breastbands. The article was really an interview with the man who wrote the book, and his name is Gareth Ryan, and it was very interesting. It was talking about his love of history and how history came about and why he decided to write the book, because we tend to focus on particular historical figures like Cleopatra, Mark Antony, you know, Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, and how we forget about the everyday people in Roman and Greek society. And he would see, you know, really funny questions being asked. He was a university lecturer for a while, and he decided he would write a book to answer all these questions. And actually, this is a book I would read. Definitely read this. I know it's going to be full of like fun little facts about stuff. And no, gladiators weren't fat, though they mainly ate a plant-based high-carb diet. And war elephants were used very carefully. And they didn't wear underwear. Romans didn't wear underwear, though they did wear under tunics. So that was definitely something. I'd always wondered that. I always presumed they did wear some sort of underwear, but then it wasn't, you know, preserved, because who's going to preserve their underwear unless they're a pervert? And then we have another little book promotion, the Churchill quiz book, which I think I will be buying my stepdad because he loves Churchill. So that'll be a good little present for him. I'll probably get it on Amazon. One most interesting article, I did do the little quiz, which was fun. And then we've got the Battle of New Orleans, which I did not read because, as you guys know, I'm not a big, you know, battle fanatic. So skimmed that, you know, it's all Civil War type stuff, you know, not that interesting. Then we have, what if the Renaissance never happened? And there was an article like this a few magazines ago, which I'm sure you'll remember. So I, again, just skimmed this because it was all the same information. Not overly relevant or interesting. Once you've read one article about the Renaissance not existing, you've really read them all. And then we have National Trust treasures. Now, don't read this. Don't read this. What do you think these animals are? Like some weird sort of fish? They're meant to be dolphins. Isn't that really strange? I didn't think they looked like dolphins, but it was just National Trust art where it came from. Like the little statue of a cat, a little angry cat. But the dolphins, they do not look like dolphins. Whoever made this had never seen a dolphin. And then, right, this is something. You know, perspective in painting can sometimes be a bit off, and like I paint, so sometimes like I'm like, oh, that doesn't look right. I made him look really fat, and I just try to make the t-shirt look foldy. And is this dog enormous, or is the buildings in the background far away? I can't decide. I like to think the dog is enormous. Look at him there, proud puggo. Well, pug. He wasn't a pug though. He was a Dutch Mastiff, but he's called Pug. Look at him, little puggo, enormous. Look, he's bigger than the house. That's bad perspective. But I liked it. I liked it. Quite funny painting. But then if I looked at it, I'd just be like, he's enormous all the time, like Clifford, the big red dog. And then we have our usual kind of, you know, reviews of stuff. The only thing that really stood out to me in this one was The Queens of Jerusalem, which I probably would read. As I said before, I'm really interested in the Crusades, so I think I might add that to my to-read list on Audible or Amazon. I've bought a lot of books recently, so I think I should really, you know, maybe buy a few things on Audible. I've got some credits lining up. And then some more recommendations, and they recommended Joan of Arc, which I was talking about probably a couple of months ago, but it was on TV and I watched it, and then there was an article about Joan of Arc in one of these magazines. I think it was the one with Henry and Louis on the cover. I can't remember what issue it was, but I talked about it because I'd seen it on TV, and then they had an article about the 100 Years' War and Joan of Arc, and I said, really good movie, you should watch it. So I'm just going to point out that I mentioned it a couple of months ago, and now they've done a review of it. Coincidence? I think not. And then last page, Princess Tart, which I think looks amazing. It's just a really nice looking cake. Only problem is I hate marzipan, loathe the stuff. So if I make this, which I plan to at some point, I am going to make it with like green buttercream frosting instead of marzipan, because who eats marzipan? If I get it on Christmas cake, I always pick it off. So definitely gonna make this at some point. Looks lovely. And that is the end of my review of issue 102 of All About History magazine. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss my other reviews of All About History magazine. The next one is going to be issue 103, All About Boudica. And leave me a comment letting me know what your thoughts on Saladin are, and whether or not you'd ever wondered if the Romans wore underwear. You can also follow me on Instagram at Lady Jessica Riddell, and I've got a little Twitch, which is the same name as this YouTube channel. It's super like chill. It's just me playing The Sims and making like polygamous cults on The Sims for some weird reason. So if that floats your boat, follow me there as well. Until next time, guys, bye!